In the natural world, size is often mistaken for strength. We assume the biggest animals dominate simply because nothing should be able to stop them. But every so often, evolution produces something that completely ignores the rule. Small, compact animals built not for dominance but for defiance. Few groups embody this better than the mustelids, and no two represent that mindset more clearly than the wolverine and the honey badger. These are mammals that are routinely known for being the meanest of the bunch because they simply refuse to yield, but their tenacious attitudes carry them in an utter foreign ecosystem of the South American Triassic period. G'day mates, I'm your host, and today we are placing the wolverine and the honey badger into the Triassic, more specifically in the Ischigualasto Formation, a place that at this time was filled with a whole bunch of unique animals. As always, we have our normal scoring system of environment, diet, and resistance to threats and competition. These will all be scored out of 10 before being added up for an ultimate survival score, and for those of you that like Spec Evo, well don't worry, I have you covered. And if you enjoy videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe as it helps me out a bunch to not end up extinct like the animals in this video. So we'll kick it off with the wolverine. The wolverine is the larger and more powerfully built of the two mustelids, roughly around the size of a medium-sized dog. It holds its reputation for confronting animals way larger than itself. Adults measure around 65 to 109 centimeters in length and stand about 36 to 45 centimeters at the shoulder. They weigh in at around 9 to 25 kilograms or 20 to 55 pounds. I mean, there is no wonder why Marvel based a mutant off this compact but mean animal. Speaking of compact, that's exactly what its body is, being low to the ground, densely muscled, being built for strength and durability rather than speed, though it can still reach respectable bursts of around 40 km an hour or 25 miles per hour. While not a true sprinter, the wolverine excels in endurance and persistence, being capable of covering long distances across difficult terrain without tiring. Its jaws are powerful enough to crush bone, and its long curved claws allow it to dig, climb, and inflict serious damage in close combat. Behaviorally, wolverines are confident, confrontational, and highly aggressive when resources are at stake. They rely on intimidation supported by real physical capability, often harassing or displacing larger predators through persistence rather than outright dominance. Cognitively speaking, they show strong spatial memory, problem-solving capability, and situational awareness, knowing when to escalate a conflict or when to disengage. This has been observed multiple times where wolverines will call off a hunt when a helicopter appears as a result of being foreign to them. Inhabiting the extremely cold climates of North America and Europe, the wolverine has to be a highly opportunistic generalist, and to be honest, it is arguably the most opportunistic of its family. It pretty much hunts or scavenges almost anything it believes it can overpower, from small mammals like rodents or porcupines all the way up to large ungulates like elk. Everything is on the menu. This often places it in conflict with predators that are well above its weight class. This includes wolves and bears. Despite the notoriety that surrounds them, they don't win every encounter. There have been times where black and brown bears will swat them away, and wolves will even take opportunities to take down younger wolverines. Still, their refusal to yield has earned them a reputation as one of the most formidable mammals relative to its size. I mean, you don't have stories about you taking on a polar bear if it wasn't for a good reason. Now moving on to the honey badger, unsurprisingly it is the smaller one of our contestants. Adults often stand around 23 to 28 centimeters tall at the shoulder and measure around 55 to 77 centimeters in length. In terms of weight, they usually come in at around 6 to 14 kilograms or 13 to 30 pounds, but they are built in a way that prioritizes survivability over raw power. Its body is elongated and wrapped in unusually thick, loose skin that allows it to twist and rotate even when grabbed by a predator. This skin, combined with its high pain tolerance, makes it extraordinarily difficult to subdue. Its sharp claws are used for digging, slashing, and tearing, while its bite, though not exceptionally strong, is precise and persistent. However, the trade-off to this is they weren't big sprinters, topping out at around 30 km an hour or 19 miles per hour in short bursts. Behaviorally, the honey badger is highly aggressive and escalates confrontations almost immediately, fighting with an intensity that often surprises much larger animals. Intelligence also plays a key role in this strategy, as honey badgers learn quickly to exploit weaknesses. There is a well-known badger escape artist at a wildlife rehabilitation center named Stoffel. Chain link fences, locks, solid walls never stop this badger from escaping. Now, being from Africa, the honey badger's diet can be said to be more broad but less down bad than that of the wolverine. They will consume insects, reptiles, amphibians, rodents, eggs, birds, goats, pretty much anything and everything. They will scavenge off others, but not to the level that wolverines do. As unfortunate as it is, the badger doesn't care attitude can only take them so far. They are still taken down by lions and hyenas, with leopards and pythons being suspected to be active predators of the species. Still, all in all, these two mustelids are known for being the baddest of the bad, having the most attitude packed in a small body. So with these two devils of paradise being established, I think it is time to break down the ecosystem in which they will have to survive within. So the Ischugalasto Formation was a seasonally dynamic floodplain rather than a dense jungle or open desert. Broad low-lying plains held rivers that periodically flooded, creating narrow corridors of rich vegetation. Away from their waterways, the landscape opened up into drier, more exposed ground that scattered plants and limited shade. In terms of climate, it seems that the region was cooler than many later Mesozoic ecosystems. A 2022 study found that the mean annual temperatures would have ranged roughly between 9 to 17 degrees Celsius or 48 to 62 degrees Fahrenheit. There would have been moderate rainfall present, however it would have been highly seasonal, alternating between humid phases and drier periods. Now, I won't lie, I think that the Wolverine caught the short end of the stick here. While it would not be impossible for it to live in, it would not be thriving. Its endurance and strength would allow it to range between river systems, and luckily the temperature was at least within a stable level. Of course though, this mustelid prefers snowy conditions, but it can withstand temperatures of up to 22 degrees Celsius or 71 degrees Fahrenheit. The honey badger on the other hand is better suited for this landscape. Its greater digging ability would provide a reliable shelter if it needed to cool off. I mean, to be fair, the environment it actually lives in can reach over 36 degrees Celsius or 97 degrees Fahrenheit. So for the environmental survivability, I would give the Wolverine a 4 out of 10 and the honey badger a 7 out of 10. One was set more so for cooler climates, while the other is already adapted for a warm ecosystem. Moving on to prey, within the Triassic ecosystem, both the Wolverine and honey badger would have a fair few options to choose for their prey base. Neither could favorably challenge the dominant herbivores of this ecosystem, but survival would not depend on doing so. Instead, both of these mammals could persist by targeting smaller bodied animals, juveniles, and carcasses, exploiting vulnerability rather than brute force. The Wolverine, as the larger, more powerful of the two, would occupy the upper end of what small mammalian predators could realistically hunt. Its main source of prey would include small to medium-sized early dinosaurs such as Eoraptor and Eodromaeus. These lightly built bipedal animals were roughly comparable in size to smaller Wolverines. Smaller cynodonts, mammal-like reptiles, were common across the floodplains and river margins. These could also form a dependable food source. Rhynchosaurs such as Hyperdapodon would be valuable targets, offering substantial nutrition with manageable risk, especially during periods of environmental stress following floods or droughts. Considering that Wolverines can go after elk, I don't think that a prey option below our shoulder would cause too much trouble. Large pseudosuchians like Silosuchus would be mostly untouchable, while adult dicynodonts like the 1-ton Ischugalasto or the roughly 300kg or 661-pound Jecalaria would be far too dangerous to hunt directly. You might have the odd brave Wolverine trying to go after Jecalaria, but I think that Ischugalasto is way above its weight range. Scavenging as it does now would play an important role for the Wolverine's survival. Large predators like Herrerasaurus and Saurosuchus would likely leave behind partially consumed carcasses, and the Wolverine's aggression and strength could allow it to drive off smaller scavengers and feed quickly before being displaced by a larger threat. The honey badger would operate on a similar but slightly lower end on the food web. While it would take down the same smaller dinosaurs, its diet would likely be focused on the smaller reptiles, amphibians, and insects which existed in the area. Burrowing or ground-dwelling cynodonts were also abundant through this floodplain, being perfect for something like the honey badger to exploit. And the honey badger's powerful forelimbs and persistence would make it exceptionally effective at raiding nests of archosaurs. This strategy would allow it to secure high-calorie food while avoiding direct conflict with the larger animals. Rather than competing over large carcasses, the honey badger would focus on scraps, peripheral remains, and areas that the Wolverines avoided. I think that overall the Wolverine and the honey badger actually score quite alright here, both earning a score of 7 out of 10. But South America was not only filled with prey options, but hostile predators. For animals the size of the Wolverine or honey badger, survival would depend less on winning encounters and more so on avoiding the attention of creatures that control the landscape. And as we know them notoriously, neither of them have made their names from backing down. Direct competition would likely be mostly intense with the early theropod dinosaurs that existed in this ecosystem. Sandrasaurus in particular occupied a similar ecological role, being a medium-tier carnivore. However, the details we have on this theropod is a bit limited, so we'll move on to some of the more famous residents. The Herrerasaurus represented a big problem. problem. While much larger, not necessarily a direct prey competitor, it would dominate carcasses and patrol broad territories. Being measured at around 5 meters or 16 feet in length and weights of around 350 kilograms or 770 pounds, any feeding event associated with this theropod would be extremely dangerous. Scavenging opportunities would exist, but only briefly and at a significant risk. This mirrors their modern large carnivore dynamics, but amplified, mainly because this theropod is larger than most of the predators that both of them had to deal with. Now within this specific area, the top archosaur was Saurosuchus. This carnivore could reach around 5.5 meters or 18 feet in length and weigh in at around 590 kilograms or 1300 pounds. Although obviously far too large to compete with directly for prey, Saurosuchus would have dictated movement patterns across the landscape. Its presence in a territory alone would suppress activity in open areas. Any carcass controlled by a creature of this size would be pretty much inaccessible for any mustelid. This would effectively remove a large portion of available biomass from the mustelid's reach. Look, wolverines and badgers are tough and tenacious, but they would have to be extremely lucky to scare a unit like this from a carcass. Against these predators, the wolverine and honey badger would be under constant threat, not just of predation, but of exclusion. Still, all things considered, if they only have to watch out for 3 carnivores, I don't think that's too bad. From my understanding, the rest of the carnivores shouldn't pose too much of an issue, either being too slow to catch them or would not be large enough to pose a threat. The wolverine's willingness to confront rivals could occasionally secure it food or territory. However, its lack of speed relative to theropods and its visibility in open terrain would be a major liability. Against the dominant predators, intimidation alone would not be enough to secure its victory. So with this, I think that the wolverine would earn a resistance to threats and competition score of 5 out of 10. Meanwhile, the honey badger would fare slightly better under sustained pressure. Its ability to dig, exploit underground refuge, and operate in marginal habitats would reduce encounters with major predators. While it would lose most direct competitions over food, it would avoid many of them altogether, earning it a resistance to threats and competition score of 6 out of 10. So now we move on to the ultimate survival scenario. Any Triassic ecosystem would be an unforgiving proving ground for most modern animals. And for mustelids like the wolverine and honey badger, survival would hinge on adaptability rather than solely on dominance. This isn't like T-Rex being sent to live alongside Giganotosaurus. They just cannot reach apex status. Instead, both could carve out sustainable niches at the margins of the food web. The wolverine would occupy the role of a high-end mesopredator and aggressive scavenger. Its strength and fearlessness would allow it to exploit prey unavailable to smaller mammals. More importantly, the wolverine's ability to defend carcasses and displace smaller competitors would be critical. In an ecosystem where large predators like Herrerasaurus and Saurosuchus frequently left partially consumed meals, scavenging would provide a very stable energy source. The wolverine would not challenge apex predators directly. Over time, reproduction would favor individuals capable of ranging wildly, tolerating scarcity, and reproducing reliably. The honey badger would survive through a different strategy. Rather than competing upward, it would slip beneath the attention of the ecosystem's giants. Its diet would be anchored by small vertebrates, insects, eggs, and resources that were abundant. Nest raiding would be a cornerstone of its success, particularly during breeding season where eggs and young dinosaurs were plentiful. The honey badger's tolerance for pain, loose skin, and aggressive disposition would allow it to forage in risky areas, including near water sources and carcasses without the need to dominate them. It would avoid direct confrontation whenever possible, instead relying on persistence, digging ability, and an extremely broad diet. And in the unfortunate occasion that a hungry Herrerasaurus does try to eat it, it can always use its scent glands to produce its infamous musty smell to keep him at arm's length. In the long term, neither the wolverine nor honey badger would dominate the ecosystem, but instead both could persist successfully. But with the millions of years that would go by, these two mustelids would evolve to better suit their prehistoric ecosystem. And here we will start with the wolverine. Now these animals would have a greater space to bridge than the badger. This evolved species would be known as Gulo-Sociovenator, or the social hunting glutton wolverine. The main adaptations of the Triassic wolverine would be physical and behavioral. A reduced coat thickness would provide heating regulation in warmer temperatures, while slightly longer limbs would favor endurance and short pursuit bursts over brute force grappling. The body would become stronger and more athletic. Its skull and jaws would remain powerful, but the overall animal would appear less compact than modern wolverines. Adults would stand roughly 60 centimeters at the shoulder, 140 centimeters in length, and weigh in at around 30 to 40 kilograms or 66 to 88 pounds. The most significant behavioral shift would be moving away from strict solitary living in an ecosystem dominated dominated by large archosaurs like Herrerasaurus and Saurosuchus, social cooperation would provide a major survival advantage. Small flexible groups composed of related individuals would allow these wolverines to harass prey, defend carcasses, and improve survival rates of newborns. This structure would look similar to that of wolves. Their pack size would range from 4 to 8 members, and with this, their group behavior would broaden their effective prey range. Packs could also exploit carcasses left by apex predators more effectively, driving off smaller scavengers and even the larger ones if need be. Aggression would remain a defining trait, but it would become more outwardly focused and controlled, reducing destructive conflicts within the group. Over time, this wolverine would settle into the role of a resilient mid-tier predator and opportunistic scavenger. While not competing with the archosaurs in size or strength, improved mobility, cooperative behavior, and a more generalized build would allow it to persist in an environment where isolation was dangerous and adaptability was essential. Where the wolverine adapted with movement and assistance, the honey badger would follow a path centered on defense and persistence. This Triassic honey badger would become modestly larger than its modern counterpart, averaging around 15 to 20% greater in mass. This would result in a more compact build, being around 30 cm tall, 78 cm long, and 17 kg or 37 pounds in weight. Burrowing would become central to its survival strategy, with complex tunnel systems serving as shelter, reproduction sites, and ambush points. Being designated the name Belvora venenivera, being the venom-bearing honey badger, this species would occupy a niche as a low-profile but extremely resilient omnivore. Rather than constantly confronting the Triassic giants, it would instead survive by making itself biologically costly to attack and nearly impossible to dislodge from its territory. Its most distinctive adaptation would develop along the darker skin of its back and neck. Modified glands would excrete a mild but extremely irritating toxin, non-lethal yet intensely unpleasant when transferred to an attacker's mouth or eyes through contact or broken fur. Its thick but loose skin, in addition to its toxic skin, would assist in avoiding being picked off by Herrerasaurus and Saurosuchus. Chemical deterrence would further be reinforced by enlarged scent glands capable of producing a stronger, longer-lasting odor than that of modern badgers. When threatened, this secretion could be deliberately released, discouraging pursuit and contaminating dens or carcasses. Now, interactions between these two evolved mustelids would not be popular, but not entirely negative. During times of extreme climate uncertainty, wolverine populations would join the badgers in burrows, while the badgers would be tolerated around carcasses. And with that, the wolverine earns an ultimate survival score of 16 out of 30 and the honey badger 20 out of 30. As always, I'd appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, and make sure to comment down below what you'd like to see next. I'll catch you in the next video. See ya, mates.